I'm Scott Eckart, and this is Future Proof, a show for building something that lasts. Let's get into it. This episode explores what it looks like to rethink a family legacy and how a small farm in Indiana became a destination that draws thousands every year. Lucas Dahl walked away from a career in engineering to return to his family's farm. But what he came back to wasn't working.
My parents have lived right there where the tree farm is since they've been married. Dad had always kind of been passionate about forestry, and there was kind of a gap in Christmas tree farms in that area. They planted trees in '85. The first time they sold a tree was in 1993.
In this episode, you'll hear how he and his wife Dana reimagined what the farm could be and how they're leading with their family at the center to build a second-generation family business that will long outlive them. You'll hear about the decision to shut down the grain operation and the early risk of building something new and what it takes to hold on to your history while moving forward at the same time.
I think a lot of people think I'm kind of crazy to homeschool our kids and run this business. It's just fun to see their skill sets starting to develop too as they get older and their desire for different things on the farm. And we also want to give them the opportunity if they want to come back. If not, it'll be fun to see what they do in life.
All right, a big welcome to Lucas and Dana Dahl, who are the owners of Dahl's Tree Farm in Thorntown, Indiana. I am very, very excited to have you here with me on Future Proof. And for those of you listening, if you've never been to Dahl's Tree Farm, you really need to go. It is a magical place. Thousands of families across Indiana have made it a place where they make it a destination each year, either in the fall or for Christmas. A place where they go and they build it into an actual destination for their family. It's something that they do every year. And I know I've sent clients there and they say that, our kids, if we don't have it on the calendar, they want to know, Mom and Dad, when are we going? And so I've had the privilege to work with you and your parents for many years, Tom and Carrie, really beginning, with your succession planning. And I have to say what a joy it's been to come alongside you in the journey along the way. How long have your folks been on that particular property, and when did the farm actually start?
So the Christmas tree farm would have started in 1985. And so that would have been 4 years prior to me being born. And my parents have lived right there where the tree farm is since they've been married, which would have been 82. So my dad had joined his dad in the traditional farming operation of corn, soybeans. They had some hogs, they had some cattle. And really the tree farm started from, the original thought was that they were going to expand the hog operation when my dad came back and joined the farm. And it wasn't a good time to expand hog operations. So Dad had always kind of been passionate about forestry, and there was kind of a gap in Christmas tree farms in that area. And so they decided that a Christmas tree farm would be a good side business. We want to start having kids and be good to save for their college. So let's just sell Christmas trees and just put that away for their college. So that was kind of the original thought. And for Christmas tree farms, the challenge to starting is that they planted trees in '85. The first time they sold a tree was in 1993. So 8 years later, 8 years of input without any return. So that was definitely a season that I admire them for going through, that they were able to put in all the, hours of work.
Talk about a long vision. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. So, basically growing up, it was the corn and soybean operation. We did phase out of hogs when my grandpa's health became to the point where he could no longer participate in the farm. And so it was corn, soybeans, Christmas trees on the side, which no pun intended, but the Christmas tree were continuing to grow. That side business was growing. And then that's where, as I grew up, I got to witness that and participate in it a little bit. But then, going to college, I didn't see the Christmas tree farm as a standalone business.
Sure.
And it wasn't until adding additional agritourism elements to it that I thought that can be a full-time thing to raise a family on.
Yeah, because one of the things I learned was that you sold so many trees that you can only cut so many, and then you need to bring out more fresh trees. So that's how successful things had gone. And it's really cool when you go out there to see the progression of year 1, year 2, year 3. I mean, you can really see that. But there's no rushing. There's no rushing a tree.
Right.
I learned a concept in meeting you called agritourism. So I think it's important as we get started. Lucas, do you mind just kind of hitting us up with the definition of agritourism? What is that?
Sure. It's a relatively new industry, although if you look back, it's probably been around longer than we think. But essentially, agritourism is the combination of tourism and agriculture, where farms essentially open up their gates to the public to come onto the farm for various activities. You can have, a you-pick farm of vegetables that would be considered agritourism because the public is coming to the farm. Or in our instance, we are a pumpkin patch corn maze fall season and then a you-cut Christmas tree season where, again, public are coming onto the farm. They're experiencing something while they're there that would be similar to a tourist coming to be either educated or entertained or both.
That's very helpful. So our backdrop for everybody listening really is that. And I think as a financial guy, one of the things to me that is brilliant about agritourism is the fact that you can have multiple revenue streams throughout the year. And every time I turn around, every time I go out there, there's something new. I think last time I was there, I saw flying pigs, did I not?
Maybe some version of that.
Yeah. And then I think you bought a tractor. You were going to digitize it or put some new gauges in it for kids. Is that right, Dana?
Yeah, just last year we added a tractor experience where kids can go in and push different buttons to learn about different crop products.
And then when did you put the trading post in?
That was in 2020.
So tell me a little bit about that now.
Yeah. So when the farm started as a Christmas tree farm, they had just a little cabin that they started selling. And just going to other conferences and things like that, I saw the vision of being able to have a bigger retail space where people can grab some type of item that they can remember the farm by, whether it's an ornament or a toy for a kid. We even try and have locally grown different types of, like we have milk and jams and that type of thing, local honey, maple syrup. And so it's just another touch point on the farm where people can experience getting to just see different items that we can offer to them.
Yeah, I love going in there to shop. It's not small.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So, yeah. So if we can, let's go back in time. I'd really like for you all, if you don't mind, to share with us one of the first conversations that you had about going back to the farm. So Lucas is a Purdue grad, go Boilers, and I'd love for you to share with us when you first started having conversations about returning. I know that the farm is very important to you, but you were headed into an engineering position, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So could you share with us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So going to college, I didn't necessarily have plans on coming back to the farm. I felt my draw was not towards the corn soybean operation. That was kind of the bread and butter of the farm at that time. And so I went to be an engineer. I felt that fit me well with my academic strengths, and I like problem solving and those types of things. So, but while in college, I just kind of more or less, stumbled across the realm of agritourism as an industry. And not that I didn't know pumpkin patches and corn mazes were a thing, but I hadn't really seen the vast options that are available in that space. I guess Dana will share that part, but I do remember sitting in, my college apartment, spending way more time than I should, just looking at website after website after website of these big farms that were doing agritourism super well in all different parts of the country, and going, I bet we could do that. I could do that and just do it a little bit different. I made that kind of transition in college of, now my plan was I'm still going to finish my engineering degree. I'm still going to try that. But I did have a pull of eventually I want to end up back at the farm doing all of these things that I'm now aware of in agritourism.
I can remember like his sophomore year coming into his apartment and him sitting by his computer looking it up and him saying, I think I'm going to switch to ag engineering. And at first I was like, okay, so you're staying with engineering. But then it was beyond that. And like, well, no, I want to like start this business where people are coming out to I mean, I already knew the tree farm side of it, but just his vision for like the fall. And then beyond that, a lot of our dates in the fall from that point forward were visiting other like pumpkin patches and corn mazes.
Oh boy. They're very romantic. Right? And then what year did you guys get married? I don't remember. You told me, but I don't remember.
We got married in 2012.
Okay.
So basically a month after graduating college. Yeah. So we started together from that point into an engineering job and then the transition back to the farm. And now here we are.
Yeah, so you told me a story here recently that had something to do with wrenches. So there you are, you're in your first job and you're getting very excited about applications, and your boss told you something kind of maybe soul-crushing, but actually not, right? So tell us that story.
Yeah, so I took a manufacturing engineering job, and it was a great job. And in fact, when I started to talk about leaving that job, a lot of people were like, "What? No, this is a job you retire from, not that you move on from." And so I am very thankful for that experience. But while I was there, I was responsible for some machinery, some manufacturing machinery, and needed to make some changes to it. And so I was, going through the problem-solving process of what needed to change and all the design elements that went along with that. And then I started basically hanging out with the guy that was doing the manufacturing of the pieces that I needed to put into the line. And I don't know if eventually my boss thought I was hanging out with him too much or what the case was, because he did tell me at one time, we engineers aren't supposed to be the ones turning the wrenches. And that kind of hit me as, well, I really enjoyed turning the wrench and using my hands, and also seeing the process from beginning all the way through the end. I don't really like the idea of passing it off for somebody else to implement. And so that was one of the moments where it was kind of clarity to me that this wasn't a long-term position for me. I was going to transition to entrepreneurship and creating something myself that I could see from beginning to end. It didn't have to pass off.
For myself, I did not ask to become an entrepreneur. I got pushed off the cliff. Okay. And I didn't even know how to spell entrepreneur. I didn't grow up around it. You did. Did you know you were an entrepreneur? I mean, did you always have this like burning desire to own and run a business?
I would say not necessarily. If I look back, then maybe it was more evident than I paid attention to at that time. Okay. The things that get me excited are endless possibilities, and seeing processes through from, beginning, coming up with the idea through making the idea actually happen. And then I like variability. One of the other things I struggled with my engineering job was, while day to day things were different, month to month were very similar. And I grew up in an environment where what you did January, February, March was different than what you did April and May, which was different than what you did September, October. There was change happening, and that was appealing to me. It's kind of maybe a little more agricultural specific than entrepreneurship, but being an entrepreneur allows for so many of those things to come together.
That's well said. So Dana, you married this kind of entrepreneur undercover. You also are an entrepreneur. Do you feel like an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, in what we do, it's become part of who I am. And I mean, growing up, like I grew up on a farm as well. And sometimes I think it's hard to like look at farmers and think, oh, entrepreneur, but I mean, that is what they're doing. And I remember not that my dad's schedule was super flexible, but he had the ability to, take 20 minutes to jump in the pool with us in the summer. And then, he may come home 20 minutes later because he decided to do that. But like the flexibility of schedule there was something that I always enjoyed as a kid. So even though he worked a lot of long hours and worked really hard, like he still had that ability to fit in the family time.
So what I love about your partnership and the two of you is, and Lucas said it really well, endless possibilities, and then Dana makes it happen. So I love to say there is no tree farm without Dana. I mean, clearly. And in all of our meetings and all of our planning, I call you this dynamic duo. I mean, the two of you are a powerhouse. And so, Dana, what is it like to be married to the endless possibility guy?
It can be overwhelming sometimes. I mean, but I see the possibilities too. I mean, we're a part of a lot of different organizations where we visit other farms and like network with them. And so I see them too, but we start the year with like, oh, let's try this, and this. And he's still coming to me like halfway through the year, but like, what if we also added this? I'm like, okay, well, he has the ideas and I'm kind of okay, well, let's look at the time frame and like, can we accomplish it in the time that we need?
Yeah, the gas and the brakes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, you do quite well. So as we continue on the origin story here, I also happen to know and had the privilege of working with Tom and Carrie, who are Lucas's mom and dad, and they were very specific with me about, we need a succession plan, Scott. We need to talk this through. And they were very secure in the fact that the two of you were there to stay. I think sometimes when I work with families, there's a bit of insecurity there about they just don't know if second gen is there to stay, and that creates insecurity. Well, in this situation, we didn't have that, which is really a beautiful thing. And so they were very specific with me about, hey, let's create this succession plan, which included you guys becoming owners, which was fantastic. But one of the things we had to talk about was what I call getting Tom off the tractor. And we talked a lot about kind of this struggle. If Lucas was also on the tractor, which he needed to be, that was less time for the tree farm and less time for development, less time for this visionary man to be able to do the thing. We had to, I guess, call it shutting down the grain operation. So that was a struggle, I guess. Share with us about wrapping that up, and then what did that do for you guys when you were able to really be 100% into the business?
Yeah, so basically when I came back to the farm, it was with an understanding that I was going to participate on the grain farm side of things, specifically in the spring and summer with planting and spraying, but that I was also going to focus on creating this fall agritourism. And, the fall agritourism was not going to be a moneymaker in year one, and we knew that. And so we needed the grain farm still to be kind of the bread and butter, consistent element to the business. But it didn't take very many years before I started feeling very conflicted of that opportunity cost of being in the sprayer, being unable to spend those hours on the agritourism and what I saw as the bigger opportunity in the future. And so I had already pretty much expressed that long term, I wanted my focus to be on agritourism. And I was still okay with Dad farming, and I actually didn't really know that he was open to stopping farming until he said in a meeting, what do you think about stopping farming and, just getting out of it? And I think everybody else in the family was like, what? But at the same time, I do think that he was seeing that same opportunity. So for him to be open to that was encouraging to me, in that he had faith that what we were moving towards was sustainable and was viable. And then making that transition really opened up our time and energy to be able to put full into agritourism. The biggest limiting factor to our business is our own time, our own energy would be I think the most limited resource. And so alleviating that to open up a big chunk of time and energy was a big game changer.
Dana, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned earlier, and that was just flexibility, with your dad and schedule and everything. And so one of the things that I think I'd be remiss in bringing up is your beautiful family. And, you're educating your children, and you've been able in many ways to really make that work. And so, family business has probably as many challenges as it does opportunities. Could you just talk about some of the flexibility that you've enjoyed, with the children and literally living on the farm, some of the things that you all get to do because of, that arrangement there?
Yeah. So in 2020, our oldest was actually supposed to go off to school, but it was COVID and all of that. And so we actually decided to keep her home. And since then, we homeschool all four of our kids now. And I think a lot of people think I'm kind of crazy to homeschool our kids and run this business. And I won't lie, it does cause a lot to manage. But overall, yeah, being able to have them see how the farm functions, but then also like midday, if we run over to the farm to do something, they get to check in with Lucas, or they get to go see grandma and grandpa. And I don't know, it's just fun to see their skill sets starting to develop too as they get older, and their desire for different things on the farm. And we're open to whatever our kids want. If none of them come back, it is what it is. But we also want to give them the opportunity if they want to come back. And, we're already starting to see little entrepreneurs in them. Our oldest two opened up their own little food stand last year, and they're planning on running it again this year. And even this past week, they were talking about hiring some of their friends, and so they're all about it. And then our youngest, our son, he's just all about like working and tractors and all the thing. And so being able to incorporate them into that at a young age, to where hopefully they see the business and how it runs. And if they decide to come back, they do. If not, it'll be fun to see what they do in life.
Our second oldest was asking my dad about why he was doing something or how he was doing it. And so he kind of briefly explained it to her, and she said, well, if I'm going to run this place someday, I have to know how to do that. She's got it in her mind anyway, but it is one of those things where we want to be able to provide the opportunity to them without the expectation that they're going to do it. And I hope that even if they decide not to, the opportunity to grow up on the farm and seeing the business, even if they don't pursue that, is going to prepare them for a lot of opportunities in the skills that they've developed, in just the experiences that they've had. How many 8 or 10-year-olds have had to interact with a customer in the way that they have. And so there's a lot of those elements that we love watching our kids get to experience, whether or not they come back to the farm at all. It's just the in the moment, what they're learning and experiencing is really special.
Yeah. I love watching it too. It just gives me a lot of joy to see them do the thing. And then, of course, after you guys saying you would never get a puppy, and then it's Holly, right?
Yeah.
joining the fray. So Dana, in addition to doing all those things, let's talk a little bit about your role in terms of management. You've learned a ton about that. So what are some of the highlights, and also some of the challenges then in having married into this family, but you are really chief of operations, and so you've got a lot on your plate. But what are some of the things that you've learned in running what's now a fairly large operation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, coming back to the farm, I just wanted to be a support to Lucas. I knew this was his passion, his dream. And as we, started doing it, I realized, okay, like I do have skill set that I can apply to this. And I went to Purdue for math education and pretty much only used it for a year. And then we started having kids, so I just stayed at the farm. But I do think Purdue helped set me up in the sense of I went through some engineering courses and some computer science things and stuff like that. And just like the problem solving and organizing charts and that type of thing was something that I just enjoyed. And so I kind of, just stumbled into becoming the operations manager at the farm. But overall, I think the challenges are that, growing up, I had odd and end jobs, but never like in the business industry, right? And so, learning how a business works and, kind of self teaching ourselves where, how do you organize a business and how do you organize staff and HR and all of that. It's been fun to learn and grow. And there's a lot of things that we've taught ourselves to be able to do. But overall, I enjoy the organization side of it. And so for me, being able to know what our projects are and have lists for people and making sure those lists are getting done and that type of thing is something that I enjoy doing. And so overall, it's been an interesting role for me to step into, and to hear people say oh, you're what helps keeps this business going. That's never what I envisioned myself being. And so it is I think that's a challenge too for me, is to actually take on that role and be confident in it. But I do enjoy it. And overall, some of my favorite times at the farm are being able to serve the customers or serve our staff. And so being able to help from that level, set those values and guidelines for our farm is something I really enjoy.
How do the two of you find time for you, though, in the midst of all of that. I know you've got some pretty good babysitters across the street. So as the kids get older, I know high season, it is what it is, but are you able to find time for the two of you in the midst of it as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, it is something that you have to pay attention to and be intentional about, especially when we work together, differentiating the time of, well, we're together a lot, but it's different to be out on a date than it is together in meetings or doing things at the farm all the time. So we do need to be intentional about that. We also enjoy the opportunities that doing this together has allowed for us to go attend conferences together and do those types of things. We don't, just us two don't take a lot of trips that are just complete leisure, right. But a lot of the things that we attend tend to be leisurely in that they are fun. Good. In addition to having a purpose as far as the business is concerned. Yeah. So they don't feel like business, and we still get to, go out to dinner during them or go out to dinner with other farms that have become friends. Those opportunities have been great.
That's nice. So meeting with your mom one time, Carrie, we were just chatting and she was just remarking to me, she goes, Scott, I can hardly believe that, we started as this literally mom and pop thing. And now, we're this real business and we have, books and taxes and all these employees. I guess my question for the two of you is, do you remember a point in time when you're like, we did it, we're here, this is what we do now. And this is where we're going to ride into the sunset.
It's been more of a process than maybe individual moments, but a couple that do stand out. When we did completely get out of grain farming, that was a moment of, essentially collectively saying, this is working and it's going to work, and we are expecting it to work. That's where it was like, well, now this is our full-time thing. This is the only thing that pays the bills. And there's been several instances where Dana will actually make comments about when we do something better than what we've been doing. And she'll be like, now we're like a real farm. And one of those is like, we used to, almost all of our signage was the back side of seed signs that you see at cornfields and bean fields, and just handwritten signs on the backs, the blank sides. And now we pretty much get professionally printed all of our signage and things so that it obviously looks better than all of our handwritten signs. But I can remember times where we've switched from one to the other, and when we put it up, Dane would be like, see, now it looks like we're a real farm, a real business. Yeah.
It's the small things, Dane.
Yeah. Yes. I think in the last few years as well, it's just his sister came back a few years ago as well, and we brought on more staff in the last few years, and to see us actually be able to sustain that year after year. It again is moments where it's like, okay, we're doing this and probably need to add on even more staff now. And, what does that look like? But overall, yeah, I think taking those initial first jumps, especially out of the grain farming, and then just where we are in these last few years, have felt like, yeah, this is a business.
Yeah, I know. In working with you all and just looking at the org chart, when we sit down and we kind of, look at that, and I'm like, hey, where's that person coming from? And, do we need to, do this and that for sure? Very interesting. And I know that you want to keep traditions, but you are innovating. What are some of the things maybe that you're thinking about now in terms of innovating even further?
My next big thing, Dana's heard this 1,000 times by now, but my next big thing is, while we've made little small changes, mostly to accommodate the number of people visiting and things, specifically during our Christmas tree season, the options of what we could add to that season is a huge list. Okay. And so really, I've just recently completed a growth plan specific to this. And the three elements to that are creating an atmosphere where people will just want to be, providing food that is, not just the run-of-the-mill, it's not a concession stand style food. It's food that makes people come just for the food. Okay. We're not going to be a restaurant that for those 4 weeks will operate like a restaurant. And then entertainment. Okay. And the entertainment options are very broad. We haven't really narrowed that element down yet. But essentially creating enough of an experience that right now, 95% or more of our visitors during tree season are there to get a tree. There's a lot of people that don't get a real tree, and that's okay, but we want to attract those people to the farm as well, even during our Christmas tree season.
Okay.
And so creating an experience that appeals to everyone to come to the farm and enjoy the farm, even if they don't leave with a tree.
Right.
You know, we have plenty of visitors that come during fall and don't leave with a pumpkin. And so kind of mimicking that same sort of thing. But it has to be different than fall because people don't want to spend 4 or 5 hours outside in December like they do in September, October. So
Well, that's exciting, and I can't wait to learn more. And I know when I'm up there, because we bring, clients, and, I love to stand back, and I have such a shared sense of pride. And, I tend to get a little emotional, as you guys know, about you guys, because there are certain points you can be and you can see a lot. And I see kids coming down the slide. I see people getting on the wagons. I see kids down at the petting thing. I see the pumpkin cannon, which is, of course, my favorite. I also know there's been some low points too, and there was a particular thing that happened that was pretty crazy. I remember I was calling up for something, and I was talking to you, Lucas, and you said, "Hey, we had something major happen." Can you share that story with me?
sure, yeah. So I guess it's been a couple of years ago now, but
Yeah, it was 4.
so we built, I'll call it a low ropes course. It's, kind of a giant jungle gym type of structure, and we were real excited about it. It was at that time, definitely the biggest, single activity type of investment that we had made. We started in January and worked on it over the course of the year, all summer, building this new activity. And so we had a lot of anticipation for it. And so I had kind of put the finishing touches on it on Tuesday after Labor Day. Wednesday night, about 70% of it was burnt to the ground. And they deemed it was arson. Nothing ever came from that. At this point, it doesn't, matter to us so much, but it was, a very gut-wrenching 2 or 3 days of, can't believe this, and what are we going to do, and those types of things. And then, we pretty quickly decided, okay, it's happened. So now really what are we going to do? Let's actually, decide what we're going to do. And then we started getting all this community kind of outpouring of support. Hey, what can we do? And so we essentially had a group of community members come together to tear down everything, because before we could even think about rebuilding, there was this giant mess of burnt stuff
In the middle of the farm.
And yes, and I'm thinking, if I were to clean this up, it's going to take me weeks. And so we put together a group of community members that had reached out. They came in and did all the just demolition of getting everything out of the way. And then a local contractor who we had worked with before on our own home, essentially in some ways came out of retirement to come and say, hey, I can help with the rebuild of this. And, because we were thinking, there's no way that we're going to accomplish it. We're 2 weeks away from our opening date. It took us months to build. There's no way that we're getting it turned around. And so basically between all of those things happening, it was usable again by the middle of the season. So essentially by the second week, maybe third week, I'm not sure, of October, we were able to open it up and allow public to use it for the last part of our season, even the same year that all happened. So it was a low, turned into, an encouraging thing for us to see the outpouring of support. And then ultimately now we look back at it as something that we came out the other side stronger than before. So
what was that like for you, Dana?
I think for me, a lot had happened the year leading into that. My mom had actually passed away. We had just had our youngest son that same year. And there was just a lot of life. And so that kind of felt like just another layer of it just felt like attack after attack, basically. And I can remember him calling, telling me that it was on fire because I was trying to put the kids to bed. For a moment, it felt like almost this lack of sense of security or peace for our family. Our house is just not that far away. And just to see our kids' response felt kind of scary to an extent. And so it did take me a while to work through that side of it. But just sitting here listening to him share the story again, it just reminds me of like, you know, how they say like God takes takes the ashes and can turn it into beauty. And I do think overall, like seeing the outpour of support, and then also it was about that year where things really started to take off in terms of like growth of the fall season too. And so as low as that felt, like there was also a lot of like them blessings that like poured into the business, and just seeing the people even inside of our business who like had been placed, you know, with different managers and that type of thing, and how they came alongside of us and like kind of like knew we couldn't handle this right now. So they took more on to like help us like open that type of thing. Feel that support as well was something that I think I'll always remember.
So people stepped up in a special way, even inside the organization. Right.
Yeah.
So why didn't you give up? Why didn't you just kind of just say, we're not going to try new stuff?
The first thought, like in that moment, was like, is it worth rebuilding or not? You know?
Which part of that's he doesn't like to do anything twice. So like if he builds something, like that's it. So for him to have to redo that project was like asking a lot.
Yeah. The other thing that made us definitely want to rebuild is our second oldest daughter. You take over. How about that?
So, I mean, like I said, I was trying to put them to bed, realizing this isn't going well. Where we live, there's a tree line, so you can't necessarily see the farm, but you could see the flames that night. And so I'm calling staff members who I know will pray, and they're praying. I'm calling like my best friend to like let her know, you know, those types of things. And so the kids are aware. Like you hear the sirens and everything. And, you know, people are asking, you know, what's going to happen next. But our kids start being like, it's going to be okay. We can rebuild this. That night, Lucas comes home from, like, after everything, you know, the fire department's left and all that. And our second, you're going to have to say what she said to you.
I mean, she just came up to me and handed me 87 cents that, you know, was her money that she wanted me to use to rebuild the ropes course because, you know, she wanted to see it rebuilt.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And the next day they had like used paper and cardboard and like rebuilt their own replica of like this.
Yeah.
We can
like here's the model to build off of to rebuild it. And so to, you know, for them to just be like, it's not even a question. It's going to get rebuilt.
And what that tells me is that they have incredible belief in both their parents that, you know, that this will happen. And my dad and my mom can do anything. That's amazing. So, you know, the road of the entrepreneur is not an easy one. And I've often said that when I started my business, if I'd known how hard it was going to be, I never would have done it. But if I'd known how well it turned out, I probably would have started sooner. You know, you don't really know how things are going to go. And yet people still come to the farm. They leave there lifted up and encouraged. And I see you doing it every day. And, you know, it's hot and it's cold out there. And so, you know, you make life better. Given the legacy of the farm, what have you learned from Tom and Carrie? Because they're two amazing people.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that has always stood out to me with Tom, anytime he's interviewed about the farm or asked the question about the farm, or like, are you the owner? And he always responds with, God's the ultimate owner, but I'm the caretaker of it. And so just that mindset of, you know, this is just something we get to steward for however long God allows us, and being good stewards of that in terms of like, you know, I've mentioned, you know, with our staff or with customers. And then just, I mean, one word that like comes to my mind with them is consistency. And so they're like, if you want to find them at any given time, they're probably out in the tree field, and they're just very consistent in their work and in what they do. And so those are two things that really stand out to me from them.
I would say those would be the same for me, and I'll add work ethic. You know, I definitely admire their ability, even as they've gotten older, they will still outwork any of our other staff. Young, old, doesn't matter. They are very hard-working people. And then also, I think they also have done a good job, as I mentioned earlier, of following their passion. You know, what they're passionate about, they pour into heavily and make it happen. And so, you know, for Dad, that was growing the tree farm from nothing to 8 years of work with no return to what it is recently. You cannot do that without being passionate about it.
Thank you, the two of you, for sharing your story. I know it will encourage folks immensely, give them courage to try again, to get up, to begin anew, to begin again, I guess I should say, in many different ways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our conversation really speaks to what the show is all about: the moments that reshape your business, the action, and the mindset it takes to keep moving forward. Here are 3 things that really stood out to me from my conversation with Lucas and Dana as we look at how to future-proof your business. Those 3 things were vision, communication, and responsibility. When Lucas came back to the farm, what was really striking to me was the clear vision that he had. Now, Lucas isn't the kind of person that walks into a room and says, "Okay, everybody, listen to me. I have this vision." So one of the things that he had to really work on was to gather people around and be very clear about his vision. So if you're a leader, that is where I would start, is make sure that people really understand and really take you seriously as you think about vision. So when you bring in number 2, communication, you must be crystal clear. And if this is something that you really struggle with, you need to ask for help where you can, but be very clear as you seek to bring other people along with your ideas and the communication that goes along with that. I've always said that responsibility without authority is a disaster. And there were times intergenerationally where he was told to go do a task, but didn't necessarily have or know he had the authority to do so. So one of the things that goes back to communication is to say, do I also have the authority to make this happen? And I have the responsibility, but are you going to give me the final say to get it done? And that wasn't always clear as they began to look at who's in charge, who's on first, who's on second. So as you go forward and you want to future-proof your business, think about your vision, think about communication, how you're going to tell everybody what you're going to do, and then do you actually have the authority to go along with the responsibility that you've been given to complete the task at hand. Dull's Family Farm is very active on social, and you can connect with them on Facebook, Instagram, or head to their website. You can find links to their profiles in the description of this episode. The future is bright. I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening today. If you like what you've heard, please join us in the Velocity Network and sign up at www.velocoaches.com, which is a gathering of entrepreneurs, business owners, and people who desire to learn more about running and owning a business. Also, you can subscribe to Future Proof on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.